What's up, guys? How's it going? Back at it again with another episode from my mission. All right, guys. I think we might get out of Calafate in this one. I'm not 100% sure. So I try to keep these episodes to about 20 minutes long at the most. So we'll see. We'll see where this one goes. So this is in this episode right here. This is me cooking. This is not me cooking. That's funny. My mom titled it "Cooking for Missionary Thanksgiving." Not true. The thing missionary Thanksgiving had already gone by at that point. This was a P day that we spent in the church building, and I this is a very memorable P day for me. Um, it was just, I don't know why it was so memorable. We all wrote our families, and while we were writing our families, we're like, oh, we're hungry. So my companion and I went out and got some food. We came back, we cooked noodles and a couple other things. Made some mate cocidos, which are little like mate, that drink I was talking about in the last episode, little packets that you just dip in like hot water, like a tea bag pretty much, and then you put milk on top, which that's what is right here in this picture. That's a milk carton, which is kind of gross. These milk cartons a lot of the times aren't refrigerated; they're just sitting on a shelf. The other thing Argentina is really big for is they like to put milk in plastic bags and just set that on the shelf too. And that was so gross to me at first, but now it's just made sense and it's what happened. Oh my goodness, I love this right here. These are our pocket planners, our daily agendas is what we call them. And we would every morning we'd get up, we'd plan out our day. First thing, pretty much, we'd get up, do our studies, eat breakfast, work out, and then we plan our day. Us and our companion would sit down. Excuse me. We'd talk about who we were going to go teach, what lessons we were going to teach them, this, that, and the other. And that was what our daily planner was. And we'd do a weekly planning session where we'd kind of plan out what our goals were for the week, who we needed to get in contact with, this, that, and the other. So that was super important. But this a big thing was we would decorate our agendas. So for every transfer we get an agenda. I still have all of mine packed away at my parents' house, but this one is a picture my friend Brinley Smith sent me while I was in the MTC. She sent me a picture, and it is Samuel the Lamanite from the Book of Mormon. And in the story of Samuel the Lamanite, for those of you who know it, they know it, but he preaches to the city their sins and their corruption from the wall, and he gets arrows shot at him, and he doesn't get hit by any arrows. Anyways, so what this is you can't really see it in this, but it's Samuel the Lamanite, and then it's stormtroopers on the ground shooting, and it says this would make so much sense because he didn't get hit because stormtroopers miss everything. Anyways, sorry I had to explain every little detail of that to you guys, but this family Quintanilla again. This is eating at their house. We were introducing Elder Peterson to them. And then the sisters were there with us eating. I can't remember what they fed us that day, but it looks good. Whatever it is, looks good. Oh, I think those maybe were homemade pizzas. I think that's what it was. So, more pictures with family Quintanilla. This was us on the bus ride back from Zone Conference. Sorry, I had to pause the video there for a sec. I think it got paused. I had to sneeze. So, anyways, yeah, these videos I also do, by the way, in one sitting and no editing. It's just storytelling. So maybe later on I'll chop them up and make them more serious. But for now, I'm just storytelling. So anyways, so this is us on the way back from Zone Conference, I believe. Nope, sorry. It says here, on the bus to Chalten. So that place that I went and hiked that mountain, we had a guy show up at our church building, and he was completely blind. And he showed up, sat through sacrament, and before he left, I said, I've never seen you before. We talked to him. Me and my companion and the sister missionaries went over and talked to him. We're like, we've never seen you here before. You remember? He goes, oh, yeah, I'm from Salta, Argentina. My wife and I are members. We just recently moved to El Chalten. And his brothers had driven him 3 hours just to go to church on one Sunday. And so we called our mission president later that day, and we're like, we have members in Chalten. We need to get a branch open there. And he's all like, all right, looks like you guys need to go out and start preaching there then. So we got permission to get on a bus, and every couple weeks we'd take a bus and go teach in Chalten, which is really, really cool, because we'd get to go stay in a hotel, and we'd split it up between 2 days, and we'd go teach the gospel in Chalten. It was so cool. I loved it. But this is that little town that I was telling you about. There's that mountain I hiked, and it's just a tiny town. This is the entire town, literally in one picture. The entire town. There's 1,200 people that live there year round, and then they quadruple that a lot of the time in tourists. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, here's the entire town there. This is a hotel room we got to stay in. This hotel was actually owned by like the president of Argentina, I guess, and so it was like bougie for Argentina. Um, it was really cool. I remember staying there and just like having so much fun. So it was pretty cool. All right, guys. Well, I'll have to get back to recording another one of these, or finish recording a little bit later. My camera died, as you can tell, so I will get back to this a little bit later. See you guys. Hey guys, I'm back again with another recording from the mission. I think we're gonna finish out my time in Calafate in this episode. So I'll probably take off from where we were yesterday. As I probably left in the last video, my camera died, and so I didn't have my video that you can see here. It's now in the other corner because I feel like better you get the whole image over here now. Anyways, alrighty, so let's start back in Chalten here. This was November of 2017, as you can see down in the corner here. Anyways, we were staying in the president of Argentina at the time. We were staying in her hotel. It was a very, very nice hotel. I remember when we got there, it was kind of a hassle to be able to get everything. We'd gone there, we were going there for the day, and then by the time we got there, our bus got delayed, this, that, and the other. And due to all of everything, we got there too late in the day, and we're like, all right, we're going to push back our bus tickets, call the office, and ask for a extension so that we can stay and teach the people the next day. And so that's what we did. We stayed in this hotel. It was really cool. I remember we did our scripture study. They had these big windows in the front of the hotel, or front side of the hotel, where it looked into the valley of Chalten. And we took those, and it was pretty cool because we went there. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a sec. All right, so we went and we sat at these windows that night, and we did our companionship study and our scripture study, and it was so cool. And I remember they served us dinner pretty much at a bar. They served us dinner, and I remember they gave me what was it was Schweppes Pomelo Blanco, which is it's a pomelo is a white grapefruit soda is what it was, and it was super good. I really, really, really enjoyed that soda, and that was the first time I had ever tried it. So therefore for the rest of my mission, I drank that quite often. But so we did our companionship study. We went to bed that night, my companion and I, and then the next morning we woke up and we went up, and we were sitting in the upstairs. They had like a loft in this hotel, and we went and sat down, and we did our companionship study. We ate breakfast. We planned the day, and then it was just like to go to the streets. But right before we were going to the streets, I heard English, and I was like, Elder, do you hear that? I hear somebody speaking English. And we looked over the railing of this loft, and there was a guy, and he was from, I believe, Canada. And we went down, and we ended up talking to him and some of his friends for a really good long time. And it was a pretty cool experience, honestly. And so after that, we went off, and we went and met up with the member in the town. He gave us some references, and then we just literally went and just knocked on every door we possibly could in this town and met people. And we met a lady who was a member of the church. She'd been living in Chalten for like 15 years, her and her husband, and they didn't know where the nearest church was, so they'd just been inactive for about 10 years, 15 years, however long they lived in the town. And I remember we walked in, and she looked at us, and she goes, "Elders?" And we're like, "Yeah." And she goes, "I didn't know you guys taught here in Chalten." We're like, "We don't generally. We just happened to meet somebody that lived here and that is a member of the church. He came to Calafate to go to the ward there." She's like, "I didn't know there was a ward in Calafate. Go to Calafate once a month." And it was just a really cool experience. She ended up messaging her mom, who's a very active member in northern Argentina, and she was so excited for us. She invited us back for dinner, which we couldn't end up going to because our bus left. But to what I know, I got transferred out before we ever went back to Chalten to teach. But the sisters and the elders that were in the area still, Elder Peterson, they all went back and they taught this lady. So, ooh, had to pop my neck there for a sec. um, anyways, that was really really cool. Oops, I'm going backwards. Here was a view from our room. This was like a beautiful valley in here, and you can tell it's just very green, very pretty. So that was really really cool. Picture there. There's another view. This is with the window open. All the windows there would like open up. It's kind of weird, but this is with the window open. I took a picture through it. Super super cool. I think this was later in the day because it was less cloudy, but beautiful area. Chalten is gorgeous. Um, just very. It's known all over the place for the hikes and just the rock climbing and everything. So this we after Chalten we went back to Calafate, and a couple days later we got a phone call from the zone leaders, which was crazy, and they're like, get on a bus right now and come to Rio Gallegos, and we're like, okay. And so we all got on a bus and went to Rio Gallegos, and turns out there was a 70 who had um, come to our mission, and we all got to hear him speak. His name was Elder Bragg. This is him right here. He's Mark A. Bragg. Super, super cool guy. Just so kind. He knows my Uncle Ken really, really well. And so when we made that connection, he was so nice to me, gave me a hug, told me he was going to go say hi to Ken for me, and this, that, and the other. It was just really cool experience. I know that him and his wife here, they hadn't planned to come to our mission, but some last minute change happened, and so they decided to come to our mission and speak 3 times in our mission. One in the northern part of the mission, one in the middle, and one in the southern part on the island. And so it was really really cool experience to be able to hear him speak and for him to give us counsel and to have dinner with him and to get to know him. Great guy. He came back one other time in our mission with President Renland, which was really really cool. So that was a really really exciting experience to be able to spend time with him and his family, or him and his wife. This is I read this thing before I started this video here. I read this little excerpt, this letter I sent home, and wow, it hit me hard. It made me tear up a little bit. This is Alejandro. The story of Alejandro is kind of cool. It was my second week in Argentina. We were walking down the street, and I just had like such a strong desire to talk to people, but I was so afraid to because I sucked at Spanish. I could not speak Spanish for the life of me. And so we were walking down the street one night, and it was a rough day. It was cold. Lots of doors got slammed in our face. And I looked at my trainer, and he's like, let's go home. Let's go make dinner. Let's call it a day. And reasonably so. It was just a sucky day. I remember that was the first time I ever had a door slammed in my face, and it was some lady. I knocked on the door, and I tried to contact her, and she slammed the door in my face, and I was like, oh, okay. That's what that feels like, and it sucked. But anyways, the very end of the day, it's getting dark, it's cold, and my companion's like, let's go. And so we start walking home, and I remember I walked past this lady, and I just remember very distinctly, like, talk to her. And I was like, I don't know what to say. So I ran up to my companion. I was lagging a couple steps behind him. I ran up to him. I was like, hey, Elder Whiting, I think we need to talk to him. And he'd kind of had a rough day, and so he was pretty frustrated and done with the day, which I've been there a million times. Elder Whiting was an amazing missionary, so I'm not talking bad about him at all. But he's all like, if you want to talk to him, you go talk to him. I'll stand there and I'm going to listen. And I was so torn. I was like, I can't speak Spanish, but I feel a very strong draw to speak to this lady. And so I walked over, and I announced myself. I was like, hola, soy Elder Pasi, soy de los Estados Unidos. Estoy aquí como misionero. Quiero compartir nuestro evangelio con ustedes. And pretty much what I said was like, I'm Elder Pasi. I'm from the United States. I'm here to teach about the gospel and about Jesus Christ. Can I share with you guys? And she kind of looks at me and she's like, yeah, I don't really have time right now. Just getting home from work. If you want to come back on Tuesday, that's fine. And this was out in the street. And I was like, okay. And I just like, I look at my companion and I was like, I don't know what she said. Like, I was like, and she, I guess I didn't really, I tried to explain myself in Spanish and she didn't understand it. So she looked at my companion. My companion pretty much reiterated what I said, explained to her what I said. And then she invited us back on that Tuesday. And my companion goes, "Oh, okay, yeah. What's your address? Can I get your address and your phone number?" And she goes, "I don't have a phone. It's out of service." Generally, when people say that, they don't want anything to do with you. And he's like, "Okay, do you have an address?" And she goes, "Yeah, I just live right here." And she just pointed to the house across the way from us. And I remember it was like super run down. The whole front window was broken out, and it just looked ratty. And there were a bunch of nasty dogs in front of the house. And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so we turned around to walk away. And my companion's like, "We can go back on Tuesday, but I'm like 90% sure that is not her house." And so we're like, all right. So we didn't think anything of it and we left. The rest of the week goes by. Tuesday rolls around and we're like, oh, we have an appointment. Let's go to that appointment. And so we show up, we knock on the door, and sure enough, it was her house. She let us in. They offered us food. They offered us mate. And Alejandro's dad was there, and he was very interested in what we had to say. We started teaching about the gospel. He was he wasn't very educated, but he was very, very cooperative, wanted to learn, wanted to share his experiences, what knowledge he had. And so he went back and forth with us. It was a great lesson. We're like, well, thank you for having this lesson with us. Can we come back? And they're like, for sure, come back whenever you want. We're like, how about in 2 days? They're like, yeah, come back. So we went home. We're on a spiritual high because we're like, oh, that's awesome. We just were able to like do our duty as missionaries. And that was very rare in my mission, even for South America. They say the further south you go in South America, the colder it gets, and the colder it gets, the colder the people are, especially towards missionary work. So we were coming out of this on a high experience. Anyways, we go back 2 days later, and I remember we're sitting there and we're teaching, and so Julio's there, his wife is there, her name was Teresa, and their little kid was there, and then their daughter and their daughter's baby were all there. And mind you, this is a 2-bedroom house, like tiny 2-bedroom house, and they had like 15 people living in this house. And we're sitting there, we're teaching, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And all of a sudden the door swings open and in walks Alejandro. And I just remember he came and sat right next to me, and he was just out in front of the house playing soccer. And even though it was cold and windy outside, he was sweating and he smelled so bad. He smelled like BO. And he sat down next to me and we're just teaching this, and his eyes just get so big. And we're teaching about the plan of salvation. He's like, so you're telling me I can be with my family even after I die? And we're like, yeah, you can. He's like, I want it. How do I get it? And we're all like, well, we'll teach you more. And so little by little, we started teaching Alejandro. And we went back a following appointment about a week later, and we issued the entire family baptismal dates, and they accepted. All of them accepted. And I remember thinking, like, this is awesome. This is what missionary work is right here. We're having success. We're being blessed. And it was just awesome. So that Sunday we roll up to their house, and because we had invited them all to church, and we roll up to their house, and Julio had gone fishing or something. Teresa was getting ready to leave for work, which she didn't tell us she had work. The daughter was taking care of their baby, and then the other kids were sleeping. And so the ward met at like 10, which is early for Argentina. And we're all bummed. We're like, what about Alejandro? And the mom's like, I'm pretty sure he left to go play soccer with some of his friends. And we're like, oh, dang it, dude. And in my mission, you had to have an investigator attend church 3 times before they could be baptized. So it was always about a month before they'd be baptized of teaching them. That also helped us like get everybody their lessons in and everything. So we were with Julio, or brother Tito, Julio Tito, the guy that was like the branch president of the ward at that time. Pretty much, he was the second counselor in the elders quorum, but he ran the ward, as I had explained in the last episode. And so we all pile back in his truck, and we're kind of bummed, and we're driving down the street. And I look over, and I was like, Elder Whiting, that's Alejandro. And I rolled down the window. I was like, hey, Alejandro. And my cousin, or not my cousin, my companion and I were like, hey, Alejandro, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to church. He's all like, I thought you guys were coming to pick me up. You guys were late. And we're like, oh, yeah, hop in. And so he hops in the truck with us and goes to church. And he loved it. And I remember we passed him the sacrament. He's like, can I take that? And we're like, yeah. And he took it and he's like, wow, this is awesome. Can I do that? I want to do that. And we're like, yeah, you could after you're baptized. And he's like, I want to do that. I want to pass the sacrament. He was so excited. Just every little detail of church was so exciting to Alejandro. And it was like that for 3 weeks. He was at church every single week. Came with us every single week, was always there, just ready. And so the day before his baptism, we went over to go fill up the baptismal registro with him, the baptismal record. And we show up at his house and his mom's like, he's not getting baptized. He can't commit to anything. And I remember just my heart sinking. And I was like, oh no, his mom's not going to let him get baptized. And we're sitting there and I'm just praying in my heart, like, what do we need to do to convince Teresa that Alejandro is ready to be baptized? And she was very, very strong-willed in what she believed. And so we start talking and I bear my testimony. Elder Peterson bears his testimony. Alejandro is just sitting there and she's like, no. And I look at Alejandro. I said, Alejandro, will you bear your testimony to your mom? And he just bore this most spirit-filled testimony I'd ever felt. And I remember just sitting there and like holding back tears because I'm like, I don't want to look like a wuss in front of this lady that's just, she's hard. And it was just so, it was bizarre. And she just looks at him. She's like, are you going to commit to this? And he goes, yes. And she goes, all right, let me see the paper. And she signs it. Signed it because he had to be 18 if he wanted to get baptized by himself without his parental permission. So she signs the paper for us and she goes, when is this? And we said, tomorrow. She's like, I'll be there. And sure enough, the next day we get to the church. And when preparing for a baptism in my mission, it was an all-day process. In Calafate, because we didn't have a real church building, we didn't have a real baptismal font. And because we didn't have a real baptismal font, we had a blue swimming pool, like one of the above-ground blue swimming pools. And so we had to clean it out. And I remember the zone leader showed up for this, and they came to help us. And so they helped us fill the baptismal font and clean it and everything. When we got there, the last missionaries hadn't cleaned out the font, and they haven't emptied it. So there was about 1.5 feet of water in this baptismal font and algae all over the bottom, and it smelt bad. And we're like, oh goodness sakes, what are we going to do? We're going to have to bail it with buckets. And we only had one little tiny bucket. We were trying to bail it, and it was just taking forever. And I remember Elder Oviat goes, I bet you we could siphon it. Let's try siphoning it. And so he stuck a hose down in there, and he starts sucking, and the water starts coming out, and he just dumps it in the drain, and it just sucked that entire pool dry. And I was just like so amazed what siphoning did. Anyways, we cleaned out the bottom of the pool, got all the algae out, and start filling it. And turns out the water heater broke. And so it's cold. Calafate is cold. The water was ice cold. And Alejandro had asked me to baptize him. And at this point, I was like, I kind of regret being asked to baptize him because it is cold. I feel bad for him because he's going to have to go under this water. Anyways, time comes. We had a handful of members show up for the baptism. He shows up. His dad didn't end up showing up, which I was really bummed about. And his little brother, who was also taking the lessons and going to church with us, didn't show up. And I was really bummed because they went fishing together. But Teresa and Teresa's daughter and their baby showed up. And I remember she sat through it, and she was very emotional as we did the baptizing and everything, because it was just a spiritual experience, and I knew she felt it. But time came, we went and got in the baptismal font, and poor Alejandro was like, it is cold. And I was like, it is really cold, I'm sorry. We get in the baptismal font, and again, the bottom of this thing, even though we cleaned it really well, it was very slippery. We get in there, and I take Alejandro by the hand, I do the prayer, and I put him under the water, and his toes come up. And so we had to redo that. And so we redid the baptism. Poor kid was so cold. Redid it. This time, I think his toes slid up a second time. And so the third time, we had to do it a third time. And I stepped on his feet, went down, and he came up. And it was done. It was good. And we were all excited. And so we took him, and he went to go get changed. And I went to go get changed too, get out of my clothes. And then we ended the baptism. with the prayer and with the spiritual thought and everything, like all baptisms are and do. And we're sitting there afterwards, and we're like, it's refreshment time. We pull out all the snacks and the treats and everything so that everybody could kind of enjoy and talk afterwards. And I'm looking around. I'm like, hey, do you guys see Alejandro? And everybody's like, no, we don't know where he is. We're looking for him everywhere. And finally, we walk into where the font was. It was in the kitchen of the church. And we walk in there, and Alejandro's standing there at the edge of the water, just running his fingers through the water. And I walk up to him, and I was like, are you okay? And he's like, yes. This water changed my life. I can feel it. I feel clean. And I remember sitting there and I was just like, oh my gosh, this young kid, this 14-year-old kid can feel the light of Christ in his life. And it was so strong, such a strong experience, that it genuinely is one of those experiences that changed my life forever. And it was just such an inspirational thing that this 14-year-old kid took the opportunity to be baptized and preached and testified to the rest of his family. Alejandro was active for the rest of the time I was there, and for the rest of the time that the missionaries were there, until the missionaries were pulled out of Calafate. And I'll explain in a later video, but later on, I hadn't heard from Alejandro in a while. We're allowed to call our converts, but I hadn't heard from him in a long time. And so at the very end of my mission, I got permission to go back and find Alejandro. Later on, also, sister missionaries were put back in Calafate, and even though they were put back in Calafate, they could never find his address because it was back in the mountainy area, and it just didn't really have an address. You had to know where you lived, because that's how a lot of Argentina is. Like, you kind of have like a halfway address if you do. Anyways, that was just that's another story for another time. But what an amazing experience, and I just know that the Lord touched that kid's life and touched the hearts of everybody that was in that room that heard him say that. So I'm going to end there on that episode because it's already pushing 20 minutes, but I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys felt the Spirit as strongly as I did, and know that the Lord has blessed us, and the Lord will bless us when we're doing what's right. And I know the church is true. I love it, and I preach it. And that is why I'm making these videos, is because I need to remember on a daily basis the blessings that I received in my mission, the blessings I've received after my mission for serving a mission. And I say those things in the name of Christ, amen. All right, guys, I'll see you on my next video. Later.